I now treat my body like a friend that I want to help. I don't punish her. I don't shame her. I do my best not to judge her. I treat her like my best friend that I'm like, all right, girl, you're talking to me. What do you need?
The truth is, kids, you must divorce yourself from your parents. To graduate from child archetype to adult archetype and complete the maturation process. Divorce yourself from your parents, from their opinions of you. Divorce yourself from the expectation that they will do or provide something for you, or that you are bound to provide for them.
All right. Welcome back to the Medicine Podcast. My name is Mimi, and I have my beautiful blue-eyed partner in life, in love, in business, and in podcasting.
What else is there?
It's true.
What's going on, everybody? This is Chase. So glad to be back on the Medicine Podcast. And first legitimate podcast video that we are doing.
Yeah, in our decked out new studio.
New studio. I'm wearing a shirt, which is rare. This might be the only time that I wear sleeves.
Yeah.
But I thought for the first one, I'd kick it off with a nice white tee that has our logo on it.
Yeah, I love it. You look good.
Thanks.
And now we have the video to prove it.
Totally. Guys, we're stoked for this episode. We've been talking a lot lately about like what would we have told ourselves in our teens and 20s?
Yeah. We also get that question a lot, when we're on other podcasts and stuff.
Right. What would we have told ourselves to help ourselves for the future? And I'm sure everybody's familiar with that question. They've either thought about it or been asked that question before. And it kind of distills down to what we've talked about before, which is we are like a remote control to like a video game. And when we're kids in our, first 10 years of life, let's say, we are being programmed by our environment, by our family, our parents, our school, the sports teams that we play for. We are being programmed with a set of buttons, if you will. And those buttons get played by life as you are somewhat unconsciously going through the rhythms of life as you know it. There will be certain environmental factors, certain individuals that you come across that might press one of those buttons. And all of a sudden, you unconsciously express yourself in a particular way once that button is pressed. And you go, holy shit, where did that come from? Well, it comes from that programming.
Yeah. The moments where you're like, shit, I just sounded like my dad there.
And it never goes away.
Yeah.
Life continues to change. And one of the things that I think we definitely found it in our marriage, was that those adult buttons that are programmed when you're a kid, oddly enough, express themselves at the most inopportune times, in the form of heated conversation with someone you love the most. And all of a sudden a button gets pressed and you're the asshole version of a narcissist that programmed that button into you when you were a kid. Maybe it was a coach, maybe it's a parent, whatever. And so what we're really going to be talking about today, and I think this is wildly important, we've danced around it a little bit in other episodes, is what would we essentially say were the core lies that are embedded within the childhood programming that we have maintained? How have we found truth, kind of the counter to these lies? And how have we been rewiring these programs from childhood until now?
Yeah. And I think, as we get into the episode, talking about the lies that we believed is important. Even if we want to get to another, even if we want to change something, we want to evolve, we want to grow in some way, I really think it is important to identify the root or the core lie that we believed. Because, we've talked about this many times. It's like, you have to know where the problem, like go upstream, go backwards into your childhood, into your programming. Like, where did this even start for me? Once we understand like the environment in which that lie started, it's easier to name it and kind of like tame it, tame it, and like, okay, that's not the truth. This is the truth. And this is how I'm going to continue on from here. But if you never, identify where it comes from, man, it's really hard to change sometimes.
Totally. We talk about it all the time. We're in a world of dealing with and spending all of our time with the downstream flooding of upstream problems.
Yeah.
And so, that's the point. We're getting upstream. We're identifying where this thing comes from. And even if it's just that today, if it's just that, that's enough.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into it,
Yeah.
I got to know, my love, what do you got going on in your cup?
In my mushy mug today, I have a delicious mixture of Organifi Harmony, which is like a really rich cacao drink with a bunch of amazing badass herbs that really support the body. It was a product that was made for women, but I know you drink it as well.
I love it.
It's delicious. It's a product that really helps support the hormonal robustness, the hormonal health of specifically women, but it can help men as well. So it's this cacao mixture. Then I have about a scoop of mushy love, so that adds some creaminess, some cinnamon flavor, and then just hot water and a little raw milk. And so this has 3 different mushrooms in it: reishi and tremella and chaga, and it tastes like a chocolate cinnamon muffin. It's so good. Yeah. And it's kind of like stormy out today. Usually I go with like a cold drink in here when we podcast, but I needed a warm drink. So I heated it up and it's all nice and warm. It's like a warm hug.
Yeah. San Diego weather is stormy and rainy and windy in this moment. That's killer. Super
delicious. If you guys want to try this mixture, we have, as you guys know, a discount code for Organifi. It is MimiFit, MIMIFIT, gets you 20% off. And then the Mushy Love, if you haven't tried it yet, Mushy Love is our baby. It's our mushroom product that we created from scratch. Highest quality mushrooms, highest quality ingredients, really simple, no weird sweeteners, no weird fillers. It's just straight up cinnamon swirly gold. It's delicious. So if you want to grab some Mushy Love, then you can go to getmushylove.com, and we have a discount code for our medicine listeners. You can use the code medicine for 10% off.
Love it.
Yeah. What you got going on in your cup, my love?
Well, in my cup, I pretty much have the same thing minus the cacao situation. So I just went with Mushy Love Latte, a nice rounded scoop with about 6 to 7 ounces of hot water, topped off with a little raw milk.
Yum.
Yeah, it's delicious. This is what do we call this one? The cinnamon roll? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the cinnamon roll in liquid form. I absolutely love that the only thing that is sweetened about this product is the organic maple sugar. Mm-hmm. I have been down the rabbit hole of alternative sweeteners, and even the ones like stevia and monk fruit eventually upset my stomach. In fact, there's a bunch of data that's been coming out around long-term use of these types of sweeteners still having this sort of like weird response with blood sugar and insulin and even like endocrine disruption, surely gut disruption. And so organic maple sugar has been an absolute just lifesaver to find and implement into this product. It really brings out a little bit of the sweetness when it's accompanied by cinnamon and by kind of the more earthy flavor of the mushrooms, really to give this balanced, like delicious, sweet but not too sweet experience.
Yeah, because the intention is to pair it with your favorite milk. And milk is kind of sweet by nature. So if Mushy Love was really sweet to start out with, and then people are mixing it with their favorite like vanilla almond milk or coconut milk or whatever it is, it gets even more sweet. If it's not sweet enough for your particular liking, then you can always add whatever sweetener you want more of. But we get the feedback all the time that people are really happy that we didn't make it super sweet.
Totally.
So that makes me
and
happy.
a gram of mushrooms.
Holler.
Getting over a gram of mushrooms a day in my life.
Yeah.
And Tremella being just the absolute winner. We've had, too many reviews and feedback to count around the benefits that people are feeling from this product. Like my skin, my hydration, my digestion, my energy. And so, guys, if you love mushy, let us know. We want to hear about it. If you want to hit us up with any other questions, we are so open for feedback and dialogue. And we just so appreciate any sort of feedback or exchange that you give us, either with the products or with the podcast. As we're growing this thing, give a subscribe on the YouTube channel, as well as a share on your Instagram if you feel so compelled. And we are in this thing to grow and help others in their journeys. Yeah.
I didn't tell you this, but we've shared on before. If you do leave a review for the medicine, whether it's on Spotify or iTunes or Apple, I guess, if you leave a review and you take a screenshot and send it to themedicinepodcast@gmail.com, we send you a personalized gift. It's a surprise. You never know what it's going to be. Well, someone left us a review. We had a couple come in last week and we sent them gifts. I sent them both a bottle of AHCC. I was feeling really generous that day.
Yeah.
Sent them a bottle of AHCC and I got 3 voice memos back from this. I'm going to give her a shout out, Jillian. She was over the moon.
Wow.
So appreciative. And she was just like, I can't, believe your guys' generosity. Thank you so much. And, I just had like a stupid grin on my face listening to her because she's been listening to us for a while and hadn't tried HCC yet. And this was her first time trying it. And anyway, she was just really, really happy. So if you guys want a legit, personalized gift, it means that much to us when people give us reviews, like heartfelt reviews, and share how the medicine has helped your life. It really does make a difference, and so we like to show our gratitude.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important before we jump in to back up a little bit. If anybody's new to the medicine, if anybody's watching on YouTube for the first time, giving a little bit of a background to our story. We are childhood sweethearts, literally teenagers falling in love in the Pacific Northwest, living the dream, middle-class America, suburb life. And we fall madly in love in high school, and we date through college. We are very heavily encouraged to get married before we move in together after we graduate. And that is because we come from a very evangelical Christian community, generally conservative in nature, great, beautiful people all in all, but really embedded in this Christian culture. We get married, we moved to Seattle, Washington, and 3 years into our marriage, we find ourselves spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally disconnected from ourselves, from each other, and leads to a divorce. I split up from you, and I moved down to Southern California. We're like, I'm never going to see you ever again, and we literally move on and tunnel our way into even further depths of what we call our health hellholes. Only to both hit breaking points and find mindfulness, holistic health, adaptogens like mushrooms, communities of people who believe in something radically different than what we grew up with, but more abundant and beautiful than we ever thought was possible. Only to then, 3 years after being divorced, organically reconnect. Yeah. And so that's the kind of the framework of a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today as we speak to our younger selves. I think having that context as to where we've come from is important. Yeah. And, it sort of gives the backdrop of these lessons that we had to learn, because I think most of what we're going to talk about today was
lessons that were initiated while we were separated, because we had both gotten to a point where it was like, well, that wasn't it. That clearly wasn't the way that
Right.
I thought my life was going to go. I clearly don't know all the answers. We hit a breaking point, both of us, and independently, separately, where we were like, all right, I'm open. And so we opened ourselves to start tearing down some of the structures internally, inside of us, and externally, things that we were latched onto. So that's kind of the backdrop of what we're going to talk about today.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we're each going to take turns going through what these lies, these core lies were, how we've been able to reframe them into a truth, and the rewiring steps that we've been taking to integrate some of these lessons or these truths into our life.
Yeah, and I want to just start with a quote from Young Pueblo. He's one of my favorite authors. This quote comes from his book, Clarity and Connection. And I just thought it was a great kind of summation of everything that we're going to talk about today. He says, next time you feel agitated because you are falling back into past patterns, remember that simply being aware that you are repeating the past is a sign of progress. Self-awareness comes before the leap forward in your personal transformation. I love that because it highlights the truth that exists for all of us, where it's like, before we can change anything in our life, we have to take inventory. We have to be self-aware of where we're currently at and really honest with ourselves. Where am I currently at? What are my patterns? Paul Chek says this all the time, but I think he's quoting Carl Jung. He says, if you don't like the way that your life is going, look very carefully at your unconscious patterns, at your unconscious choices. And so that requires a lot of self-awareness. So I just wanted to lead with that because we're talking about things that happened over years.
Yeah.
Once you become aware, that's not it. That's not the end of the road. You have to acquire the knowledge, but then also acquire the tools and the practices to rewire some of those neural networks, those pathways in your brain that get grooved so deeply.
Yep.
So that's what we're also going to be sharing is like, how are we putting this into practice such that it becomes second nature to where we don't have to think about it as much?
Yep. Awareness is the first step. Those buttons we talked about on the remote, on the remote control have been pressed and you react. That's okay. It's about being aware of them and then graduating from awareness into integration on change.
Yeah. All right. I want to hear your first lie.
First lie, the core lie that I believed. And this one's kind of entangled with a couple. I believed that my worth was based on what I produced. How much money I made, how many cars I have, how much I was able to lift in the gym. This is also kind of intertwined with this idea growing up that I was born into sin, that I was a sinner, and that I had to achieve or earn my way out of some like spiritual human deficit. I also believe that the world was bad, that just life itself is bad. Other people are innately bad, which creates a reality of one, scarcity and fear of literally everything, whether you're conscious to it or not. And two, guilt, that you're not doing enough. Fear and guilt are wildly powerful energies that can lead to some pretty freaking awful decision making.
Which we've seen the last 3 years. Fear and guilt have ran the show.
Totally. So reframing this, working on this, shining this up, the truth, the counter to this is that you are worthy of love and respect simply for being the most honest version of yourself. And I'm kind of talking to myself in third person here. You don't have to be something or succeed at something that does not feel authentic to you. Like, you don't need to fit inside the box, is what I'm trying to say. And you surely don't have to accumulate money, degrees, jobs, friends, other achievements, women, in order to be considered valuable or worthy of love. So how have I been rewiring this? How do I continue to work on this today? I think first and foremost is listening to my intuition, getting lost in what you love. All of those, things that I've been talking about that I need to achieve. And I still have to like reposition myself out of thinking this, like, once I get, the cold plunge in my house and once I get the other property that I have that I can grow, biodynamic food off of in the Northwest and it's completely off the grid, then I'll be free. Then I'll be safe and I'll have done enough. I still am working on this constantly. Those things, if you realign your target, and you become aware, will be the byproduct of integrity and hard work. I'm fully believe that. Also, removing the attachment to fixed outcomes. Having money, a specific job, specific possessions, or specific people in your life is a very fixed outcome attachment. Again, I would say get lost in what you love. Like I'm speaking to myself in my early 20s as I'm starting my career. Dude, find some time where you lose track of time.
Yeah.
Try to forget the finish line and be only concerned with the process. What do you keep coming back to regardless of what the outcome leads to? Stay there. Get intoxicated by the process. I also think I would tell myself to acknowledge when I feel that lack, when I feel afraid or I feel guilty. I don't think it's healthy to just block and stifle emotions altogether. So let them, without reacting to them externally, let them play out inside of yourself and observe them. It's okay to allow it to pass, but do not let it dictate your choices or how you view yourself.
This is something that came up for me when you were talking a few minutes ago, is especially for the masculine. You're talking about get lost in what you love, find what you love, listen to your intuition, lean into what lights you up, right? That's highlighting purpose and how critical purpose is for a man, because certainly we all know, you were one of them, we all know the men who go for the sexy, shiny, glitzy, glamour job, maybe in finance or whatever, and they make a lot of money, but they don't feel like that's their purpose. Like they're in alignment with what their soul is telling them. Like, this is my purpose right now. It's a job. It's not your purpose, right?
Right.
And so you can make all the money, you can have all the status type things, but you're not necessarily going to feel that fulfillment because it's not necessarily your purpose.
Yeah.
And I think when people in general, but in this case, I'm speaking to the masculine, when you lean into what you love and you find that purpose, you love it so much you want to keep doing it. It doesn't feel like work as much. So it's a labor of love. So you have your purpose and you love it, and the byproduct is money, is a career perhaps.
This is about worth. This concept is about worth. And an embodied, purpose-filled life is the gift that keeps on giving. It is energy providing. You can spend an entire day doing something and you're done with the day and you're like, man, I can't wait to do that tomorrow. Or like, damn, I wish there was more time in the day to do this.
Yeah.
Different from my worth is based on outcome, where I'm grinding to achieve something only to realize that it's not satiating and not fulfilling, such that I need double, triple, quadruple in order to convince myself that it's been enough.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, I got to hear from you. Your first core lie, and what would you tell yourself now?
All right, the first lie that I'm going to talk about today is I can't trust myself. I am not a trustworthy person. I can't trust my own intuition. And I'll give a little bit of backstory of why I came to this. Like, where did this lie come from? I felt this at its deepest following our divorce. And then also when I hit my health hellhole rock bottom, I was evaluating like, okay, I destroyed my marriage, unhappy. I'm clearly not healthy. My hair is falling out. My face is blowing up in acne. I can't digest my food. I have a rash on half my body. Clearly, I'm not healthy. Clearly, my marriage didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to. I was in such a low place that another lie within this lie was, okay, if my actions and judgment got me to this place where I am today, now here, quite unhappy and feeling very unbalanced and broken, how am I ever supposed to trust myself? I'm not trustworthy. My judgment and my intuition is not trustworthy. So the conclusion that I came to was, okay, clearly I'm untrustworthy. So whenever I get the urge to do something or the intuition to do something, I'll just do the opposite. And that must be right. Just like try to wrap your mind around what a mind fuck that is. Because you just go back and forth. Well, I'm listening to my intuition here, but I know that I don't have good judgment. So maybe I should do this and that. And then you second guess it. And it's just a swirling, just dumpster fire.
Well, and I think it's wildly relevant because we're in a world of if you speak your opinion, you can get crucified for it.
Yeah.
We're also in a world that tells you to stay in your lane, stay in your corner. Mm-hmm. You didn't become a doctor. You didn't become a lawyer or a financial professional. God forbid you have a thought or opinion about one of those things if you don't have the credentials.
Yeah.
And so we're in this world of like, oh, I can't trust what I say. I don't have the fucking resume for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't get a degree in this. Right. Yeah. And, most of this was just my own life choices. It was just like, how am I showing up in the world? And it was a very, very confusing time. So that was the bed of lies. And the truth is that I've realized now, speaking, what I would say to myself back then would be, your soul is here to help guide you. I know you don't feel a connection to it right now, but it's imperative to develop a relationship with that aspect of yourself first before you can start listening and really understanding the voice of your intuition when it's truly balanced, not just necessarily like listening to the ego or programming. And so really developing a relationship with your soul, higher self, whatever you want to call it. I like the word soul. This is what will help you create a magical, fulfilling life and relationship. Your soul is always acting in your best interest. You just need to learn how to recognize its voice and its nudges. So that's the truth that I've realized, and how I'm, really stepping into that and how I'm practicing that and rewiring my brain. Because this one definitely takes some practice. Yeah. I mean, everything we're talking about today takes practice for sure. So rewriting this program started with an intentional, very drastic life change. So I was living in Seattle, working as a very busy dental hygienist, also a health coach on the side, feeling like I was living a double life because I couldn't figure out why my hair was falling out, but I could help people lose weight. Like, it was so bad.
Health does not equal weight. I think we'll get into that later.
Yes. So I knew that I had to change. I knew that I had to make a big change. So I actually moved back home. I moved back in with my mom and her husband, Tom. And I really just started to focus on my own health needs. So that was the first step in me rewiring this, was getting out of the environment that was contributing to my dis-ease. And then I really, made stillness and meditation and mindfulness and daily study a core value of my every single day. Like, it was a non-negotiable. I was getting up and jumping into study, meditation, journaling, like reflection on what was happening inside of me. And I didn't know it at the time. I wouldn't have called it this, but I was starting to create this space and this stillness to where I could hear my soul. Like, my soul was in that moment taking care of myself, knowing that I didn't even know. I wouldn't have even articulated that way as my soul, but that's what it was. So I allowed the space to hear my intuition, my soul, where previously I was just numbing and suppressing. And then the next piece of the puzzle, which was unique to me in our story, but there might be something similar in someone else's journey. The next piece of the puzzle was you. And this was really like, up until this point, I had just been, practicing with myself with small decisions on a daily basis, small decisions like, I'm going to like stop drinking and going out. That just affects me. But I was listening to my intuition, that paid off. I started to feel better. So those choices up until that point just revolved around me. So now with you introduced back into my life, there was a lot of external noise about what we should or should not do, counselors, and, is this for real? And just kind of like chatter from people, like kind of doubting what was happening for us. And so this was like a test. This was when my internal world was now being met with external
contradiction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so this was where the universe was really testing me, like, okay, this is an opportunity for you to really listen to your intuition, and it could go really well. Or, if you didn't, like, I, wouldn't be here now. My life would be very different. These are big choices. So I guess my feedback or my takeaway for someone listening who's maybe navigating something like this is, when you start to tune into your intuition, the universe, this sounds so woo, but like, it's true. Call it God, whatever you want to say, like your life will hand you opportunities, bigger tests to really listen to your intuition when it really, really matters. And so for us, I just had this noetic sense that I wasn't meant to be with anyone else. And I made that very clear to you. It was absolutely undeniable for me. And obviously it paid off in listening to my soul in that instance. And because that was such a significant choice in my life, and I know that feeling of what my soul sounds and feels like inside of me, now I can use that as a barometer, moving forward with other aspects of my life. And so since then, I've learned even more tools to interact with my soul on a regular basis through meditation, through stillness, journaling, time in nature, some of the techniques that we learned from Paul Chek at his workshops, shout out. So that these all help my regular ongoing relationship with my soul. And, even not even just what the decisions that I'm making today, but confidence in myself that in the future, I will know what that sounds like. So even something like how we're going to raise our future child. Like, I don't know all the answers, but I know I'll be able to lean into my own intuition and its nudges, how we show up in our relationship, how I step into what we're creating in the world. I really do my best to follow those intuitive nudges and I'm able to hear them because I have this daily practice of listening and creating the space for those nudges to be heard.
Yeah, I can trust myself. I can trust the voice of my own intuition. And I think, what comes up for me as you've so beautifully articulated all of that, is that if you don't listen, or you just keep listening and not take any action, you might stay safe. Yeah. You might stay in the path that a million other people have told you should stay in, and you might end up with the white picket fence in the suburbs with, a freaking couple kids and a dog and all that kind of great stuff. But you're missing out on, I think, what life is about, which is like creating your own path, pulling on the cord of risk just slightly, finding your boundaries. Mm-hmm. What's the term? You can't find your center unless you found your edge.
Yeah.
And it's those types of little decisions to listen to your intuition. I think the other thing is, and it's true, and it's unfortunate that it's gotten just completely, oversaturated, but this idea in the self-development, personal development, spiritual space, which is like, the vibration that you emit will come back to you from the universe. And it's on every fucking influencer's Instagram carousels. But I think it's true. It is. But there's an element of it that's not talked about, which is sometimes when it comes back to you, what you're calling for, what you're asking for through manifestation or your vibration is like, when it comes back to you, it's like, oh, fuck, that's really hard.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's really hard. So what's not talked about is like, it's probably not going to be easy. It might feel like you're at the top of the roller coaster with butterflies in your throat, about ready to, crush it.
I think that's a really good point, because a lot of times listening to your intuition and making a decision actually isn't the most convenient choice.
Yes.
Like in our situation, getting back together with my ex-husband was the opposite of convenient.
Right.
Like it, absolutely. But I'm not saying necessarily if it's inconvenient that's the right choice. But oftentimes what's meant for us in the life that we want to create, we have to go through adversity. We have to go through those obstacles.
Yeah.
Like the obstacle is the way.
Right.
And if I would have been like, no one gets back together with their ex-husband. Like people just don't do that. It's unhealthy. I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Great book, by the way, Ryan Holiday. If you're listening, we'd love to have you as a guest on the Medicine Podcast.
What are you talking about? What book?
The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that people understood. Yeah. All right.
Excellent. Well, I think that dovetails nicely into unpleasantry as it pertains to hard choices and a lot of these rewiring decisions. So moving into the next lie that I had told myself and believed was that it's around my parents and my family dynamic. So I believed that my parents' stamp of approval was the primary source of validation for my life choices. Career, marriage, my religious choices, where I lived. And it's funny because I think if you would have asked me in my 20s, hey, do you think that your parents' approval is the primary source of validation for your life choices?
Yeah.
I'd have been like, fuck off. No, it's not. But the way that I behaved and my inner dialogue, I think was evidence that I still held on to these beliefs.
Yeah.
And I think this is not uncommon for folks. And the thing is, I come from a beautiful family, a successful family, incredible parents, safe, stable, middle class America. Like I grew up with the 90s kid dream. It was freaking awesome. But I believed that their approval of me was my primary source of validation. I also maintained the belief, and again, probably not consciously, but deep in my subconscious, that my parents were responsible, or at least partially responsible, for my successes and failures. And that they either owed me or I owed them something. What I'm describing is a codependent relationship to my parents.
The C word.
The C word. What is the truth? The truth is, kids, you must divorce yourself from your parents to graduate from child archetype to adult archetype and complete the maturation process. Divorce yourself from your parents, from their opinions of you. Divorce yourself from the expectation that they will do or provide something for you, or that you are bound to provide for them. So why this can lead to challenges is that you can become an adult where you are the world and kind of just the normal course of growth requires detaching from your parents, the people who cared for you, the people who made sure that you were stable, safe, clean, healthy. But there is a natural maturation that requires separation. Maybe the rare family dynamic has parents that are conscious to this, and they actually initiate some sort of rite of passage for the child to actually detach from them and become their own adult. I would say that most in our culture do not. There's unfortunately lots of just neglect and abandonment as well, where there's no parent present at all. But there's this other side too, where there's just a really unhealthy dynamic of codependency, which will lead to, if you do not detach and divorce, it will lead to a roller coaster of emotions that will be dependent on the perspective that your parents have of you. The way that they might either guilt you, or the way that you feel like you're constantly having to prove to them that you're worthy of their love and support, or maybe they don't give it to you at all, and so you're constantly, either consciously or unconsciously, doing something that you think will give them or provide this stamp of approval.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I say divorce, I mean, you have to kind of formally in your mind break up from them and then get back together as friends. Like hashtag friends only.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you a question there? Because I'm sure there's someone listening who's like, yeah, I know that I need to, make that leap, that divorce, whatever. But what would you say to the person whose parents like absolutely don't accept that? Like they're also in a codependent relationship. That happens, as well. It's not usually just one way. And, the parent, I could see taking it as like offensive or like you're doing this to hurt me or like who are you, like I didn't raise this person, I need your respect, things like that. So
and that's when I was talking about this being unpleasant, because it can be, and it requires, just like breaking up with a significant other, it's sticky. And you have to allow and honor that time and those emotions that come up. So don't expect your parents to take some of this communication easily or gently. It might trigger in them a very reactionary state, and you just sort of need to let that play out and provide a safe container to handle it. And I'll get into it in a minute when I talk about rewiring. And so I guess leading into rewiring this, I want to start with this quote from David Data in his book, The Way of the Superior Man. And he's speaking to men here, but I think this applies to all children. A man must love his father and yet be free of his father's expectations and criticisms in order to be a free man. So what he's saying here is love for one's parent is vital to being balanced as an adult human being. Having love, appreciation, and gratitude, regardless of the family dynamic that you come from, for the people that chauffeured you into this life experience, is a critical pillar to a balanced life. But there is also a level of freedom that is also critical to a balanced human life that can only be achieved when you have removed yourself from fulfilling all expectations or being impacted by the criticisms of your parents. This is hard. And so what it looked like for me was that it started with, for instance, it was eating away at me that I was not a Christian, and my parents were sort of assuming, my family was just assuming that I was still a Christian. I consumed cannabis, and it was actually vital in me getting through the pain of our divorce and using substances that have changed my mind and grown my personal development in more ways than I can even describe. And it was eating at me to not have this authentic relationship with my parents. I felt like I had to conform to them like I was still a child, and I'm here in my late 20s doing this. And so what this meant was for me a literal decision to be very open and transparent. Like conversations with both my parents about what was going on in my life. I'm not a Christian. Here's why. I consume, psychoactive medicine, if you will. And here's why. And that came with really tough feedback. And there was a period of time where I didn't know if it would be kind of the end of having the intimate relationship that I once had with them. But I had to allow it to happen.
Because they didn't respond that well. To,
right. Yeah. Now, in the long term, they've been able to see me in my life and the fruits of my life and see that I'm balanced. And we have this beautiful friendship now. We had a breakup, but we have a beautiful friendship now. And it's required, the other thing I would say as I'm rewriting this program is creating boundaries. I want them to be my friends. And I want them to be supportive of me as I want to be supportive of them in their life. But that's where the boundary lies. It's we're just going to be friends here. I also refuse to get into their relationship dynamic. I love them for who they are and what they've done for me, but I am not responsible for fixing in any way their relationship. And they have a beautiful relationship. So fortunately, there's not much fixing that's needed. I also had to learn, and I found this the hard way through getting divorced with you, was that you and I, our health, our wellness, and our marriage, and now in our partnership, is our family.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I just kind of assumed that you don't really have a family until you have kids. And so you're just kind of like, I was still...
Who made that rule?
I know. I was still like by default, just assuming that I was like part of my family.
Yeah.
And so I was emotionally swung between your family and my family because of where they would want us. You need to be here on Christmas. You need to be here on Christmas. You need to go to this church, or and I was just getting like emotionally exhausted from trying to appeal to the codependent nature of our extended families. And so drawing the boundary around, this is our family, this is what we prioritize. And then lastly, the thing that I would say as far as rewiring this program with codependent parents and codependent relationships with their children is, I'm not interested in taking handouts from my parents, even if it's freaking tempting.
Yeah.
Like, I receive gifts from them and I'm open to that, but I have a very intentional reciprocation of the gifting process. You and I also structure visits with my parents and our parents at large in a way that would be as if our friends were visiting us. Instead of like, maybe, oh, this is an inconvenience, my parents are visiting, or hey, while they're here, we should get them to do this for us. We rather try to curate an environment of fun and collaboration. And if there are projects or chores, whatever, but it's always done from a place of like, hey, buddy, there's nothing like a love between a parent and a child, and a child to a parent, and that types of love will never be changed. But I think in the way that you behave as adults, this divorce yourself from your parents is a critical step in the maturation process.
Yeah, because when you initiate that divorce, what you're saying is, I am my own parent now. I am making conscious, intentional decisions with my life. And this is what I'm doing. I love you. I respect you, but I have to be my own parent now. You are removing that responsibility from them. So if they're no longer your, they're always going to be your parent, but like they don't have that parenting role anymore that you needed when you were a child. Now you're on equal footing. Now you actually can be friends.
Yep.
And so I think that that's really what allowed your parents to see you in a completely new light, and mine as well. I've done this with my own dad where we have a whole other thing, but I had to do this as well. I had to divorce myself from the attachment that my dad would ever be XYZ.
Yep.
I had to really show up and parent myself. And now I don't have any like qualms about telling my dad about certain decisions in my life or what I'm doing, how I'm showing up, because I'm like, no, we're equals. We're good. I don't need that parenting side from you anymore. I love you, but I'm past that. And if you, especially, all of this caveat, you must do it in a respectful way, in a respectful and loving way. It's not like, F you, I don't need you anymore. It's, sitting them down and being really loving and honest and like, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate all you've done for me. This is, I'm making my own decisions now, and I would love your respect. I don't necessarily need it. This is the way that I'm going, but I just needed to be honest with you. There is a right and a wrong way to do it.
Absolutely. This is a respectful thank you. I'm ready to do this myself. Your support and your love will feel like a warm blanket in my journey.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use you as the vehicle to get somewhere. And if you don't, I think people talk about it all the time. We live in a world of entitlement. And I think a lot of this comes back to this codependency between parents. I think that the successes will feel less deep and satiating if you haven't done them from step A to Z without your parents or without a support structure. I also think that the failures will be easily blamed on someone else if someone else is in the codependent process with you, and you'll miss the chance to learn something.
Yeah, everything that you're saying is all about stepping out of the child archetype into the adult archetype.
Yeah.
And that's scary sometimes, it
Yep.
is like I'm taking full ownership. The ownness is on me now. And that can be scary. And I see why some people don't want to go there. But ultimately, that's what needs to happen for you to be a fully embodied, intentional adult in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me lie number 2.
All right. So a very, very, very big lie that I believed so much of my life, probably the majority, is that if I could just get to a certain physical size, shape, and specifically leanness, that I would finally love myself, that I would somehow be more lovable, desirable, and worthy of love from others and myself. I believed that if I just ate the right foods in the right quantities and said no to the bad foods like sugar and bread and carbs, that I could control the outward expression of my health in the form of body composition. And those lies, they did lead to me hitting those body composition goals. I did get super lean, like size 25, abs showing, 120 pounds. Like I met those composition goals that I thought were going to, make me happy, finally worthy, looked great in a bikini, but almost every other aspect of my health completely was deteriorating and crumbling. I couldn't digest my food. My face was blowing up in acne. I had a rash on half my body. You guys know my story. Like my hair was falling out. I got to this breaking point where I knew that something had to change. I couldn't live like this. And so that, over time led me to the truth, which now I fully embody and believe in my life, but it did take some time to get here. And that truth is that real health is so much more than how you look in a bikini or how you look with your shirt off.
Right.
That body composition is just one tiny piece of the health puzzle. It is a piece, but it's a tiny piece. And when we make that our guiding light, you can bet that other aspects of your health, really important aspects of your overall physical health, are going to get trashed when body composition alone is your guiding light. Like I've talked to hundreds of people that would say the same thing, that they led with that. And then they noticed all these other really negative side effects popping up: gut health, acne, skin problems, fatigue, hypothyroidism. Like so much comes down to us fixating on what we think we should look like from the outside, when we're not really thinking about what's happening on the inside when I do, when I live this really like restrictive lifestyle.
Yeah, it's funny. The things that show up, this is just the way that holistic health suggests, the infinite intelligence of the human body. It's like literally just giving you check engine oil lights all the time, which is, hey, your skin's, my skin's breaking out. Hey, you're not pooping well enough. Maybe it's all liquid.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a big old solid that's like a ball. It's hard to get out.
Thank you for those details.
Maybe it's lack of libido or impotence. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the inability to have an erection. This is pervasive across young men.
Yeah. And in those cases, your body is not deficient in a pill or a prescription or a pharmaceutical, which is, where a lot of people go. They go to their doctor and they're like, oh, you're having this symptom? Well, let's turn off that check engine light with this pill. It does that. But you're not getting to the root. You're not actually addressing like, why is that happening in the first place?
Totally. And sleep is another one, and so all of these little lights, what's funny is like that should be the health metrics.
Yeah.
Are these. And it's funny because the body will literally tell you, hey, focus on these.
Yeah, which leads me perfectly into how I have been and continue to rewire my brain. This one I feel really solid in, more solid than I ever have been in my life. And although I know I'm going to continue to rewire if I need to and adjust where I need to as we go through different stages in life. You know, I haven't had a kid. I haven't been pregnant. I haven't had postpartum things going on where I'm like, I need to readdress like how I'm viewing my own body and everything. But right now in this moment, I do feel really solid in this. And it started with opening up my mind. When you're at a place where you are completely hitting rock bottom, when you are desperate, it's a lot easier to open up your mind to new information. It's not necessarily easy to practice all the time, but it is easier to be like, okay, clearly I don't know the answer. I am open to hearing other ideas of what other people might suggest or my intuition, et cetera, et cetera. So it started with curiosity for me, and I became a student of my own body, listening to the communication that my body was sending me. The only way that it knows how. My body can't talk to me, so it sends me signals through these different areas of my body or aspects of health. My body never lies to me. So instead of trying to manipulate my body composition to fit what I think health is or what Instagram is telling me this is a healthy body or whatever it is, I engage in holistic health practices and understand that when I do that from a balanced, intentional place, when I'm truly nourishing my body from a place of love, the shape that my body takes as a result of that is where she wants to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So instead of trying to manipulate my body to fit something else, I nourish it and then love whatever shape it takes. And this isn't just like blind body acceptance, blind body love, because I do think that there is a distinction here, because I think that we can call it body love and really it is disease. I'm talking about real intentional holistic health practices.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that, truly like really clear.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about the masculine and the feminine energy on this show. And what we really mean is the left brain, the right brain, the masculine being left to right, top to bottom, strategic, intentional, and the feminine being more intuitive, a little more creative, a little more flowy. And so as it pertains to health, by no means is it just like, just only, ask yourself every morning how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. 'Cause there's a masculine element to this as well, which is like, go get blood work done.
Yeah.
Go take a look at your key markers and see where that resonates within you. Mm-hmm. And then it's this mixture of the intuition and the, how's my energy? How's my feeling today? You know what? I just checked in. I think that I could, lift something heavy today. Then you can balance that out by going back to the data and looking at something like your growth hormones or your anabolic hormones and saying like, you know what? The last month, as I've been feeling this urge to lift something heavy, my growth and anabolic hormones have actually been showing that they're in a significantly better position. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. And so it's this two-pronged approach.
Yeah, totally. You're listening to your body's communication, and then you are acquiring the tools or the knowledge. Say it's going through a program, or say you hire a coach or someone to help guide you. Maybe it's a doctor or practitioner to help you like, hey, what are the keys to getting healthy? Well, you do need a roadmap. A lot of times, like having updated blood work is a really important piece to the puzzle. So yeah, that leads me to the next point where I'm rewiring, where I have been rewiring my brain, is acquiring new knowledge and tools all the time. So when we have an expert on and we interview someone who has this new technology of how to test, how to do a blood test or how to test your hormones. Like, we're constantly just staying open to that information and checking in with ourselves like, hey, would this be good for me to do? Would this be helpful for me? Staying open to that new knowledge and resisting the urge to say like, oh, I already know that. Or
Yeah.
I already have done that before. I did blood work 3 years ago. Like, I'm good. And really, I continuing to understand and acquiring this understanding that health is not an outcome to be achieved. It's rather a journey through which we can all evolve and learn more about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, the physical body is just a conduit. It's a vessel for us to learn more about, yes, our spiritual body, our emotional body, our mental body, but also the physical body.
Yeah.
It's so critically important. You can't learn the other things if you're not tuned into your health, your physical health as well. And so above all, if I can sum this point up with how I've rewired my brain, is I now treat my body like a friend that I want to help. I don't punish her. I don't shame her. I do my best not to judge her. I treat her like my best friend, that I'm like, all right, girl, you're talking to me. What do you need? What can I help you with? I'm doing my best to listen to you. I'm going to show up for you. What do you need today? I will do my best to provide that for you. And that has been the biggest switch for me, rather than treating it like a malfunctioning just set of like levers and pulleys that's not doing what I need it to do or looking like I need it to look. Like, just treating her like a friend.
Yeah. Well, your body's my best friend too.
And so making that switch has really allowed me to redefine completely what my physical health expression looks like. So instead of the lie that is physical health is me looking good in a bikini, it's now a bunch of other things. My skin is clear and glowing. I can digest all of my food easily. I have multiple healthy, well-formed bowel movements every day. I sleep soundly. I have a healthy sex drive. Thank you with that, by the way. My hair is growing long and shiny. My hormones are balanced, and I embrace my feminine curves. My skin tans without burning. I feel strong in my workouts. I eat dessert occasionally and have zero anxiety from it. And lastly, this is not exhaustive, of course, but upon waking, I feel excited about my day and what I get to create in the world.
Yeah, I love that.
That's how I see my health.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. I've obviously been in a similar pattern and had to break away from it. So I'm so glad to be in this with you.
Yep. Thank you for your support. All right. What's your third lie here?
Third lie from me. This is a big one. And there's no way that I can come close to even touching this one in its entirety. So I'm going to do my best. But
just touch the tip.
Touch the tip. Just the tip. So I was told that God was very specifically our Father who art in heaven, the creator and the source of all things, personified by an image of the all-knowing, all-powerful, fierce, and brutal, yet also loving
question mark
divine Father. Just Father figure, beard, looked like Zeus, maybe muscles. And that this entity had a son named Jesus that was sent to earth to sacrifice himself on behalf of the sinful nature of human beings, which the loving dad created, apparently. And they're so awful that Jesus needed to come and basically sacrifice himself literally on the cross. You know, everybody knows kind of the Christian story. And that's kind of like part one of my belief that I'm considering not true. After college, I stopped believing this. And not just this, I stopped believing in God altogether. I went to a Christian college where we studied deep into the history of Christianity, the history of all major world religions, mostly monotheistic. And I just resorted after 4 years of kind of really deeply evaluating some of this stuff. This doesn't make any sense. This is not rational. There are contradictions everywhere in religion. As such, there's no such thing as God. And that we are just a science experiment of unknown origin, no person named God.
So the pendulum swung from this end of the spectrum to completely the other end of the spectrum where it's like scientific materialist.
Yep. So what is the truth that I would zoom back in time and tell myself? I would say, bro, God really does exist. But it's not the old bearded white guy who looks like Zeus in the sky, who sacrificed his son for your sorry ass. God can be a plant, a relationship, a project, a creative flow. God is everything. God can be the perfect run down a ski hill. It can be those moments in life when you laugh so hard, you dry heave, or something that's moved you to the degree that you cry out of gratitude. But God also hurts, and that's okay. Like, it can hurt a lot. Those moments of pain when things aren't easy, when you have physical, emotional, psychological turmoil, are actually some of the greatest God moments. They allow for the possibility of and the proper context for bliss and satisfaction. And there's a lot there, and I'm going to get even deeper here because this is important to me, and it's a constant rewiring. I'm consistently addressing this program because, and I'm going to get into it, I still don't know.
Yeah.
I've experienced God, and as I talk about how I'm rewiring this from the God in the sky to no God at all, I'm in this kind of like gray world of I've experienced God and I've come to understand that I know God. I may not know exactly who he is or who it is, where it comes from, but I've experienced it and I can say that I know it. It's like we're friends who've just kind of recently met, but feel like we know each other forever, although we're just going to take some time to get to know each other. We're still getting to know each other. And that's the thing, is like, I don't know much more than that about God. My explanations surely aren't enough. I'm going to do my best to describe how I interact with God. But ultimately, I'm okay with not knowing. And I think that's the point. Our mentor, Paul Chek, he uses the quote often when he says, God is an infinite circle, the center of which is everywhere, the circumference of which is nowhere.
Which is like, you can meditate on that for like a couple hours.
Totally. And it's weirdly like, oh, I don't know how to re-explain that, but it also sounds really true.
So the center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere.
Yep. Basically undefinable yet real. And so, yeah, so it means God is real, surely everywhere, surely felt in any moment, but also unconfined to measurement, outside of the standards that we would call, laws of nature or laws of science. When I think about this, I have to realize that I will likely never find God through memorizing a bunch of definitions, through reading a bunch of books, scriptures. Grasping God through reason is something that I just don't think works for me. And so what does that mean? It means that for me to articulate God, it can only be just a fraction of what I have experienced, and explaining will never be enough. So I actually choose to break away from these definitions that confine God to a written or spoken explanation. Like the Christian articulation of God with kind of a beard in the sky. And I realize that's very much the Americanized version of Christianity. There's a beautifully deep and historic, mystical form of Christianity that actually is quite incredible.
That's just not how we were programmed.
No. But I find God real through a transcendent experience, not reading verses out of a book or looking at evidence for God under a microscope in a lab. I've realized that as I break away from, these definitions that the world maintains about God, by default, unfortunately, I've become a religious heretic. And that's another sort of divorcing myself from my upbringing and my programming that I've had to walk through, just for being open to experiencing God and having a connection to God without limitations. And whatever. Some people may get that through religion. It's not for me to judge or be skeptical. And that's a huge growth opportunity. And as I'm rewiring this program, it is the refusal to, out of bitterness and pessimism, just
judgment,
out of judgment, completely scrutinize the way that other religions are articulating and experiencing God.
Yeah.
But I remind myself that experiencing God is like love. Try to define love, like the feeling of love for something or the feeling of love for somebody else. It's too intense. It's too incredible. It's impossible to define.
But we all know it's real.
We've
know it's real. We've all felt love.
And for instance, like my relationship to you is absolute love. And in fact, it's the most profound love that I've ever experienced. I don't even know how to contain myself with it. But if I was to tell people that that was God and that they need to find a romantic partnership to the degree that you and I have in order to know God and experience God, then isn't that limiting? Not everybody finds access to this love through partnership. It might be their craft. It might be their work. It might be their family. It might be something else. Yeah. But if I'm to say, no, that's not the right love. Only love can be experienced through romantic partnership and connection. I'm limiting love. And I think God is in the same way limited by dogmatic religion.
Yeah.
Paul says that, again, it sounds like I'm fucking quoting the Bible. Paul Check says that if you want to find out what exactly God is, then you have to do what's necessary to create the environment that's supportive of that, which I think works really well with, like, if you've listened to Joseph Campbell at all, what he said God is like. He would suggest that having a peak experience, a bliss experience, flow states, these things that are becoming quite buzzy and popular, like being outdoors or hiking in nature, doing something that pushes you beyond the bounds of your perceived human capacity, finding flow through athletics. I think he was actually like a collegiate runner or something at Columbia. So he gets these runners high and he's like, holy shit, that's God. And he quite literally says, when you experience and you can't help but say, oh my God, that's God. Your soul is literally speaking it. And so it's that feeling of somehow experiencing God, but also feeling like that it's a part of you in the same way, that it's not like externalized and completely separate from you, I think is a critical attribute. So as I just integrate this and rewire this programming of God, again, like I'm to this point where I may not ever totally know completely. I'm definitely not going to be able to articulate it completely. So metaphors and beautiful metaphors. If I'm going to study God, I'm more interested in the metaphorical approach to the energy of God or an attribute of God. And this is why my rewiring has taken the course of study through art and beauty and poetry and allegory and myth. And I find that to be more grand in the explanation of this thing that's undefinable and unexplainable than it would be trying to memorize Bible verses like we grew up with.
And it makes sense because this is going to be a whole nother conversation and podcast episode, but we just casted our archetype wheels.
Yeah.
And your first one, that is ego and personality, basically how you show up in the world is as a storyteller. That is that's your number one archetype that shows up. And so of course, the way that you would interact with God, that divine spark that is everywhere, including inside of you, is through the storyteller.
Yeah.
That just is clicking for me right now for you. And it's like, man, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think the beautiful part about story and myth is that they are beautifully true, but they're not literal.
Yeah. It's a story that never happened, but is happening all the time.
Yes. And so that's where I choose to rewire the idea that the literal words of biblical Christianity are real and cast myself beyond the short-sighted idea that because we don't know, there's nothing, and choose to receive the energy that is the divine.
Yeah.
I rewire and choose to see everything as God through creation, through self-expression. I focus on experiencing God through our relationship. Absolutely. And the bliss states that we get to create in our own discovery of this freaking mystery. I mean, it's also through connection with nature. You know, I think in my life, it's looked in different ways that I look back on and go, wow, I think that was God. And I wanted to lean into more of what those can be. You know, basketball used to feel like God in the way that I define God now. Water skiing still does, man. That shit is bliss. Making music, making art, experiencing community, experiencing the collective as it vibrates through something like ecstatic dance or through something like sound healing. And as our friend Ryan Meeks would say, anything that brings me closer to love. I think I can kind of rewire myself through this relationship with God by finding those lanes and those experiences that bring me closer to love. So that's my long-winded, probably stumbled and jumbled approach to explaining how this journey about my understanding of God has taken shape.
Yeah, I mean, we could obviously talk for hours. I think you did a great job of summarizing that and how you've transitioned and rewiring your brain is it's really cool to witness, but then also hear you articulate as the storyteller is really fun too. It's not an easy question, you know. We ask this question to our guests all the time. How do you interact with God? What is God to you? How do you define God? Which is sort of a paradox even in the question. How do you define God? We, you know, have more of an understanding that it's like, it's something that is undefinable, yet we still try.
And I was hesitating to bring it up into this conversation today because I just know that it's so tough to explain. But I can't help but look back on my life and see that if I wouldn't have rewired this, one direction would have been, I think, just a very limited view by only accepting the Christian version of God and Jesus as the way, the truth, and the light.
And it would have felt very inauthentic to you.
For sure. But the other would have been this short-sighted, nihilistic approach to there being no divine purpose, intelligence, experience that would have left me like I was in my 20s, cold, pessimistic. Yeah. Cool.
Not too much, not too little.
The way of the Tao. I got to hear from you. This is your last lie.
Last lie. And this was a big one. And it's really a lie that bleeds into every other aspect of my life. And that lie is that love of myself was only possible when I behaved in a certain way, when I achieved something, and as I discussed earlier, looked a certain way. And, you know, I think sometimes there's this like practice of people who are like, you know, you need to love yourself. And like self-love is this big buzzy, you know, term right now that's oversaturated and misunderstood, I think. You know, you hear this from people, coaches, where it's like write down 10 reasons why you love yourself. And you sort of say them as like affirmations, right? You know, for example, I love myself because I am generous, because I am intelligent, because I am kind, because I am honest, because I am beautiful, because I am tough, et cetera, like whatever it is. So I get to have
wine in the bathtub tonight. I think that's usually like self-love is like treat yourself day.
Well, what we're doing when we do that, like it sounds benign, and I'm not totally shitting on this. Like I think there can be some value in that, like speaking into ourselves, but what's going on behind the scenes, the thing behind the thing that you may not realize is that now your ego is attaching itself, it is attaching external situations to your love capacity. So now your lovability is contingent upon what you produce, what other people see, how you behave in the world. Okay, well, what happens when you're not kind, when you're not generous, when you slip up and you don't sound intelligent, when you don't feel so beautiful, when you're not honest, like what happens then? Now your ego, and this was true for me, is there to show up real quick and tell you a completely different story. And this came out so aggressively in my 20s and in our marriage. I thought I deserved self-love because I was a good wife, because I was honest, because I have a good heart, because I'm a good person, et cetera, et cetera. Like all these just like fluffy things. So when I was unfaithful in our marriage and didn't show up as honest, as kind, as loyal, as a good wife, well, again, now my ego had a completely different story to tell me, that I was unlovable, that I didn't deserve anyone's love, that I was untrustworthy, that I was a monster. Like these were literally things that I was telling myself. And it was such a pervasive lie that I believed, and it really like sunk its claws, sunk its roots deep in me. And I will say that like I'm still rewiring this, because when those memories come up, I feel the scars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so this is going to be something that I hope it's not, but it could be an ongoing, lifelong journey for me.
Yeah.
But the truth, those are the lies, the truth that I do know on a fundamental level, even if I have to remind myself from time to time, is that, going back, and if I could talk to myself when I was learning these lessons in a really aggressive way, is that when you don't feel love for yourself, you are simply knowing yourself wrongly. That love of self is not something to be learned. It's not something to be taught how to do. It's something to be seen. It's something to be realized. It's something to become aware of, that love is our true nature. And we can acquire shells, barriers, and get out of balance to the point that we don't see that. But it doesn't mean that love inside of us that is our nature went anywhere. It's just that there are these shells and barriers to us seeing it in the correct light. So, going into how have I started to rewire this very deep, harmful lie? First is an understanding that feeling a lack of self-love is only due to a lack of self-knowledge. And instead of continuing to live in guilt and shame and judgment of myself, I started to become curious. So curiosity is the key. It's like the person, sticking the key into the lock. That mode, that behavior takes curiosity. And so we have to lead with curiosity about ourselves, which then opens the door to compassion, which then, for me, led to realizing that I was seeing myself wrongly, that I wasn't a monster, that there were reasons why I chose to do what I did, why I am the way that I am, and why I have the programs that I do. There's a reason behind all of it. And shaming it is not the answer to change. It's actually coming from a higher perspective of yourself and seeing yourself in a completely new way. And to explain this a little better, I have this little story that I wanted to share. So if you're having a hard time, if you're listening and having a hard time like putting this together, I think this story will help. So just imagine with me that you are a teacher and you teach the second grade.
I would never be a teacher of the second grade.
Because you don't like teaching, right? Not because there's anything wrong with it.
Right. I would be an awful teacher.
Okay. So imagine with me, though, that you're a teacher of the second grade. You have a great class. You love your kids. It's going great. But there is one kid in the class that just seems to be a problem child. He's a bully. He is disrespectful. He mouths off to you in front of the whole class. He's just not like the other kids. And you're really curious, like you're just so frustrated. Like, why is he like this? This is so frustrating. I can control everyone else in the class except this one kid. So you decide to get curious, and you ask this kid to stay behind one day in after class. So he stays behind, and again, you lean into curiosity and you start asking him questions about himself. You ask about what he likes to do, his home life, his hobbies, and you're just genuinely wanting to understand this kid more. And through your questions, you realize he tells you that, his dad isn't around very, very often, and his mom works 2 different jobs. She's not around much either. And when his parents are there, they're fighting a lot. They say mean things to him. He doesn't have any brothers or sisters. So you get this picture that there's other things going on that are contributing to how he's showing up in your classroom. So now you're linking things. Because of your curiosity, it leads to compassion for this little boy who's just misguided. He's unbalanced and he's not experiencing love anywhere else in his life. Then you realize that, oh shit, if I would have led with shame, judgment, guilt, blame for this little kid and leaned into like punishment, that's not going to fix anything. What this little kid needs to change is love. He needs an example of love in his life. And I paint that picture because it's easy to see or to imagine a child needing love, but we don't realize that that's in all of us.
Yeah.
We have a little child in us, in all of us, that needs love and is wired a certain way because of certain things in our past. I'm not blaming it on that, but we need to realize that there is a reason why we are the way that we are. And when we lead with curiosity, that opens the door to compassion, which then lays the groundwork of any change that we want to make in our life. The foundation, the soil is now love, is knowledge of self, which then leads to loving self. So the missing link from annoyance, frustration, shame, judgment for the things that we don't like about ourselves or how we're showing up in life is knowledge. Nothing about you is random. There's a reason why you do what you do. There's a reason why you are the way that you are. And when we become curious, we can uncover more of ourselves, which then can lead to real change that's rooted in love. Because when the changes that we want to make is rooted in shame and guilt and judgment for ourselves, that's painful. And we as humans naturally are averse. We avoid painful situations just by nature.
Yep.
So if the root of you changing and evolving is flogging yourself, that doesn't feel good. We're going to shy away from that. We're going to avoid that. But if we go through curiosity, compassion, and lay the groundwork of love, that feels better to our nervous system. We're going to be more likely to make sustainable changes that can last longer.
Yeah.
So I want to end with a quote from my friend, our good friend, Christina Rice, from her first book, Manifestation Mastery. And she says, the more you understand yourself, the more in touch you are with your soul's desires, the more you will realize that you are naturally led down the path of most ease and grace and flow. The more disconnected you are from yourself, it's like having a master teacher living in your house your whole life and never speaking to them. I love that visual, like picturing that there's a master guru living in your house and you don't know it and you never speak to them. You never ask for their advice. You never ask for their guidance. That's you. All the answers that you're looking for are within you, but it takes us getting curious first to realize that we have those answers and we're the only ones that have those answers because we're the only ones that have insights into our past, our programming, where we come from, all of that. No one can guide you in that way like you can guide yourself. but it has to start with curiosity.
Yep.
So again, wrapping this in a nice bow, the lack of love that you feel is simply because you are knowing yourself wrongly.
Totally. Nailed it. I love that. So much of, what we've talked about is there's some stickiness in the rewiring and identifying that you've been living lies in a lot of ways. And, but once you realize that, I think the path becomes a little bit more clear. So like in all of this, I wanted to close with a quote from Marianne Williamson. I just love it so much. And I hope it's found inspiring. This is from her book, A Return to Love. And she says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Come on. I love that. I love the line of, there is nothing enlightened about shrinking yourself or playing small in the world. That doesn't help the world.
Yep. Playing into your childhood programming and some of those patterns is staying small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this sharing, quite vulnerable sharing on our part, is inspiring for people. Even if you're not going through the same exact things, I would guess that many of you have gone through the same exact kind of journeys that we have and gone through, received the invitations to these lessons and rewiring. But the framework is the same no matter what the lesson is. It's becoming aware that you're not experiencing what you want to experience.
Yep.
And then just tuning into those patterns. Again, going back to the Young Pueblo quote at the top of the episode, is like just realizing that you're in a negative pattern or a toxic pattern or a pattern that you just don't want to experience anymore. That in and of itself is growth.
Yep.
And then from there, acquiring the tools from a curious and compassionate and loving place for yourself and the little child within you paves the way for you to create what you actually want. And then, getting to tell yourself a new story, I think is the goal.
Totally.
So whatever the lesson is, that's the framework, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Love it. Before we go,
Yes.
what my love is your medicine of late.
My medicine is, I had a great lift this morning. I'm just going to keep it simple. And I go through cycles sometimes where I'm like feeling more yoga or I'm feeling more morning walks or, I'm in a cycle right now where I feel really good and strong lifting and in the gym and everything. And I'm just leaning into that. I'm appreciating my body, everything that it does for me on a daily basis, and just wanting to nourish my muscles with movement, with tearing and, lifting heavy. And it just it just starts my day off in a really good place. And then from there, I'm like, I already did something, probably the hardest thing that I'm going to do all day. And everything else is kind of downhill. And it just gets your mood into a place where it's uplifting. And I know you get it. I'm preaching to the choir, but yeah, I'm just really grateful for my body. And so movement and specifically lifting is my medicine right now.
I totally get it. Most days I get out of bed because I'm so excited to move my body and start exercising. It's just, I just love it so much. It is just so available to us all the time, everybody.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. What about you, my love? What is your medicine?
Well, I'm going to say that my medicine of late has been on the opposite end of the day from yours. And I've just enjoyed our evening routine lately, where we wrap up dinner and then we blow a bag of just incredible organic herbs and essential oils, and we take it out on our deck, and we just sit there, having a vaporizer bag with, a bunch of incredible herbs and adaptogenic, substances. And it just like opens our mind, and we have amazing conversation. And we talk about so many things that end up, in show notes for the podcast.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's just so fun. And it almost feels like a creative project just to go out there and like talk about the meaning of certain things, and
we watch for aliens too.
We look for aliens as well.
We invite them in.
We've been really intentionally focusing on finding some alien craft, if you will. But yeah, that's been my medicine. I find that just so nourishing, and it's so calming to my nervous system before I go to bed. So I love it. It's medicine.
It's medicine for me too. So good.
Guys, thanks for hanging in there. We want to hear from you. Let us know. This will be on YouTube, so you can let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Hit us up on social. On Instagram, I am _Chasen_1. And happy to hear from any of you what you thought about the episode.
Yeah. I'm at Mimi. I'm at Mimi_the medicine, and our DM doors are always open. But yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to leave a comment in the comment box, I would love to know, like, what is a lesson, or what is something that you're rewiring in your brain right now, or maybe this got you thinking about, something that you could rewire, or that your intuition has been nudging you to rewire. We would love to hear from you guys.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys, thank you for hanging with us. We'll talk to you next time. Go spread some light. Okay, bye.